Okay, so the third piece. So now you're changing the story, which is great. You're perfecting the story. Next one I'm going to do is change up the story for significant impact. One thing is to perfect it, get it smaller, more compact, and everything like that. But then change up the story. What do I mean by that? You all have the story build checklist that I sent out with the 12 pieces in it.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
change one of the 12 characteristics or two or three of them. So that's not changing the storyline. It's changing how you tell the story. Change up the story. That's what I mean by that. So, and I wrote down here, you can change up the feeling in the story. So typically you tell the story this way to emphasize this feeling. Change it up so you have a different feeling that comes up. Put the depth and the lift in a different place in the story. Chronologically start the story in a different place. And I'm going to talk about bounce. Bounce is where you go like, have you ever experienced that? You know, so you bounce it back to the audience part of your story. I'm going to come back to that one. Change some of the senses. Focus on what you hear instead of what you see. Focus on a feeling that people have. Change some of the details. Add some details that you never added before. Be more expressive in different pieces. Good storytellers will change up how they tell the story. Does that make sense for folks?
Mhm.
It's not just the story and the context and the details and the facts, but it's how you tell the story.
Mhm.
So I'm going to tell you a story about the Valley of Despair. Again, where I used a major bounce. Okay. So I was on a project in Minneapolis. This is now 1996. So I went from 91, 93. Now it's 1996. This is 5 years in working the Valley of Despair. And I was telling the story. We were implementing SAP. And I was doing it with the finance organization. So the controller was in the room and all the direct reports to the controller. So accounts payable, accounts receivable, treasury, all that kind of stuff. And I'm doing the Valley of Despair. We're going to implement SAP. And we're talking about the Valley of Despair. And the question that often comes up is, what's the depth and breadth of the valley? You guys remember those kind of questions? Like how long is the Valley of Despair?
Mhm. Depends. The consultant answer.
And I took a breath and I did a major bounce with my story. I didn't answer it the way I typically would. Like, it depends, and it's like this, and it's like that. I looked at, and the guy's name was Paul, by the way. So I looked at Paul, who was the accounts payable guy, the lead. And I said, Paul, how many accounts payable people do you have in your department? He said, about 30, 33. I said, okay. So if you have 33 people in your department, and they all know what they're doing for the most part, 80% competent on everything that they're doing. It's like, yep, we got that. And I said, if you hire somebody that, an experienced professional, but they have to learn how things are done at this client, at this company, how long does it take them to get 80% proficient? And he said, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. It's like, okay, got it. So now when we're implementing SAP, and if it's truly transformational on how we do everything in finance, because we wouldn't just do an incremental change and spend all this money to do an incremental change. So we're fundamentally changing how finance is done and accounts payable is done. And everybody's in the room going like, yep, totally agree. We're going to change everything. I said, so now you have 3 super users that are 85% competent in the new way of doing things and 30 people that are not. It took you 6 to 8 months to get one person coming into a context that they knew everything. How long do you think the Valley of Despair is when you implement this? He turned beet red because he was in front of his boss. And he said, longer than 6 to 8 months? And I said, correct. That was huge for the project because hypercare was scheduled for 6 weeks. And we extended it to 6 months. We sold a major piece of work because the Valley of Despair was going to be so long. But again, the engineer in me, it's like I used the numbers, I used the curve, you know, and it's not just, and so I didn't get known as the touchy-feely change guy. You know, it was like the guy's got hardcore numbers and hardcore logic attached. So that was the right story at the right time with a significant impact on the project. It wasn't just my team. It was the entire project was impacted by this, and that was 1996. So that came because in that moment, I hadn't planned on that, but I told the story with a bounce. I took it and put the story in the hands of the people in front of me. Think about that as part of your storytelling, is how can you make more of a major bounce as part of your changing up the story. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.